What if I told you that everything you desire, every dream, every possibility, already exists right now, waiting for you to step into it? Not tomorrow, not someday, but this very moment. The truth is, nothing can move in your life until you move within. You must be in it to activate it. The moment you enter the feeling of already having what you want, the universe bends to mirror that inner shift. This is not theory, it's law. So the question is, are you ready to stop waiting and start living from the end? You can never touch what you do not first become. The world mirrors not your wishes, but your inner state of being. You can stand outside of your desire forever, hoping, waiting, visualizing from a distance, and nothing will move. But the moment you enter the state, the very instant you feel yourself to be what you long to become, everything changes. The world rearranges itself to reflect that new assumption, for consciousness alone is reality. To activate the state, you must dwell in it mentally until it feels real. You must see from it, not toward it. The poor man who dreams of wealth must stop begging the world to change. He must inwardly assume the feeling of abundance and let that feeling possess him. The lonely must not look for love, but become love. The sick must not long for health, but feel themselves whole. Creation is finished. All states already exist. You move from one to another by the act of assumption. You don't struggle or strive, you relocate in consciousness. Do not stand at the door of your desire, walk through it. Think from the end, live from the end, and remain faithful to that inner conviction until it becomes natural. Let your imagination clothe you with the identity of the wish fulfilled. When you occupy the state, life itself bends to your inner decision. So tonight, close your eyes and be in it. Be the one who already has, already is, already knows. The unseen will take form, for consciousness is the only cause. You must be in it to activate it. Reality reflects your inner state, not your wishes. What you see outside is nothing more than the echo of what you have accepted within yourself. Every event, every person, every circumstance is a mirror showing you what you truly believe to be real. You may wish for something better, something brighter, something grander, but if within you there is still doubt, fear, or lack, that is the reflection life will faithfully return to you. The world has no power of its own. It merely obeys the silent command of your inner assumptions. A man may wish for wealth and speak endlessly of abundance, but if inwardly he feels poor, undeserving, or uncertain, his world will match that feeling perfectly. A woman may desire love with all her heart, but if she secretly believes she is unworthy or forgotten, her experiences will continue to confirm that hidden belief. It is not the loud declarations that create, it is the quiet state of being one holds within. You can say all the right words, perform all the right actions, and yet if the feeling of lack dominates your consciousness, reality will reflect that lack without fail. The great secret lies not in effort, but in alignment. When your inner state matches the thing you desire, it must appear, for there is no separation between the unseen and the seen. The invisible state of consciousness condenses itself into visible form. When you dwell in a feeling of success, success expresses itself through every avenue of your life. When you rest in the conviction of love, love surrounds you effortlessly. The outer world bends to the image you hold of yourself, because that image is the blueprint of all you encounter. You do not attract what you want, you express what you are. Every condition of your life is your inner state made visible. Change the state, and the facts of life will rearrange themselves accordingly. The key is not to fight the outer picture, not to resist or resent what you see, but to recognize it as the shadow of a belief. When you understand this, you stop blaming the world and begin transforming the self. You turn inward, not to escape reality, but to reshape it at its source. The only task is to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled until it becomes natural. The moment you feel the reality of your desire within, the reflection must follow. It cannot do otherwise, for the outer has no choice but to mirror the inner. Your mind is the workshop of creation, and your feelings are the tools with which you shape destiny. Every emotion, every conviction, every assumption sends a vibration into the world that returns as experience. Therefore, if you wish to change the reflection, you must first alter the image you hold inside. The mirror cannot smile until you do. You must enter the state of the wish fulfilled. To enter it means to feel yourself already in possession of what you desire, to think and act as though the dream has already materialized. It is not something you try to make happen through outer effort. It is something you accept as real in your inner world until it becomes the only reality you know. You cannot stand apart from your desire and hope it finds you. You must step into it in imagination and occupy it as though it were already true. The feeling of the wish fulfilled is the secret doorway through which every manifestation enters this world. When you live from the wish fulfilled, you abandon the old version of yourself. You no longer identify with lack, waiting, or uncertainty. You begin to walk, speak, and think from a consciousness of completion. The mind that once said, "I will be," now quietly knows, "I am." The difference may seem small, but in that shift lies the power that shapes your world. The outer facts will still appear unchanged for a time, but your inner state has already moved, and soon the reflection must move as well. The unseen always precedes the seen, and the assumption of fulfillment is the cause that compels its visible effect. Entering the state is not pretending or daydreaming. It is claiming ownership of the invisible reality. You must let the feeling of already being or having what you desire sink so deeply into your awareness that it becomes natural. It is not forced or strained, but accepted with quiet certainty. The world outside may contradict you, people may doubt you, and circumstances may seem unyielding, but none of that matters. The moment you take residence in the fulfilled state, the process of manifestation is set in motion. This act takes place entirely within you. You do not need permission, proof, or external validation. All creation begins and ends in consciousness. To enter the state is to align yourself with that version of reality, where your desire is already a fact. You imagine the scene that implies your wish is fulfilled, you feel its reality, and you persist in that inner conviction regardless of appearances. The mind faithfully recreates what the heart accepts as true. Every time you return to the state of the wish fulfilled, you are building the bridge of events that will lead you to its physical expression. Do not wait for signs to believe, believe and the signs will appear. The feeling comes first, the evidence later. To enter the state is to live from the end, to think from the result, to know that all creation is finished, and you are merely selecting which part to experience. When you make that selection with conviction and feeling, reality has no choice but to conform to it. Creation is finished, all states already exist. Nothing is ever created anew, and nothing is ever lost. Every possibility you can imagine, every version of yourself, every outcome, every experience already exists in the infinite field of consciousness. You are not creating something that does not yet exist. You are simply choosing which state to occupy, which version of reality to make visible. The moment you understand this truth, struggle ends. You no longer try to force things into being, you begin to select them with awareness. Life becomes an act of choosing rather than striving. In this vast universe of completed creation, you are the traveler moving from one state to another. Each state contains its own sequence of events, relationships, and outcomes. The poor man and the rich man, the healthy and the ill, the loved and the lonely, all are states of consciousness, complete within themselves. When you shift your attention and feeling into a new state, you automatically move into a new reality that corresponds to it. You do not have to fight the old. You simply stop feeding it with belief and emotion. Attention is the only key that unlocks the door to a new experience. Every thought you think, every assumption you hold, determines the state you are occupying. When you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you have already entered the state in which that desire is realized. The outer world, still bound to time, will unfold to reveal what you have already claimed within. Because creation is finished, you are never waiting for it to happen. You are waiting only for your senses to catch up with what is already true in consciousness. This is why desire is a divine signal, not a sign of lack. Desire simply shows you the state that is calling for your attention, the version of yourself that already exists and wants to be expressed. Once you grasp this, you cease begging for change. You no longer plead with circumstances or chase outcomes. You turn inward and identify with the new state. You live from it rather than toward it. You begin to think, feel, and act as though the wish were already fulfilled, not because you are pretending, but because in the unseen realm it is already done. Every possibility exists simultaneously, and consciousness is the only reality that determines which one you experience. When you persist in the assumption of your desired state, everything in your outer world rearranges itself to reflect it. The people, places, and events that belong to that state will appear naturally, without effort or manipulation. You are not changing the world, you are changing states. And when you shift your inner attention, the outer must follow, for there is nothing to create, only to become aware of what already is. Feeling is the doorway to manifestation. It is not the words you speak, nor the thoughts you repeat that bring your desires to life. It is the feeling that lives behind them. Every creation begins as a feeling, for feeling is the language of the subconscious mind, and the subconscious mind is the creative power that shapes your outer world. The feeling of already being or having what you desire is the secret bridge between the invisible and the visible. Without feeling, imagination is a shadow. With feeling, imagination becomes substance. To feel is to give life. When you imagine your wish fulfilled, and allow yourself to feel its reality, you send a clear signal to the creative power within you. The universe responds not to your words, but to your inner vibration. You may say, I am wealthy, but if you feel poor, lack continues to express itself. You may affirm, I am loved, but if you feel unworthy or lonely, that feeling will shape your experience. It is always the feeling that manifests, not the statement. Feeling is the energy that animates the image, giving it power to appear in your world. This is why the art of assumption is the art of feeling. To assume the wish fulfilled is to feel the emotion of the end result right now. When you close your eyes and imagine the scene that implies your desire has come true, you must feel the joy, the relief, the gratitude as though it were happening in this very moment. It is that inner movement of emotion that creates the change. The subconscious does not distinguish between real and imagined. It accepts what you feel to be true and brings it forth in form. Feeling is the invisible magnet that draws its likeness. Every emotion you dwell in sets the tone for your reality. If you live in fear, you attract circumstances that confirm it. If you rest in faith, you invite experiences that reflect it. You cannot fake a feeling, but you can choose where to place your attention until a new feeling becomes natural. By dwelling on the end, by repeatedly feeling the joy of fulfillment, the mind begins to accept it as fact, and once accepted, it must externalize. Feeling is the secret key that unlocks the door between imagination and expression. When you master your inner emotions, you master creation itself. You do not need to wait for evidence before feeling the reality of your desire. You must feel first, and the evidence will follow. Everything in life bends to the tone of your inner feeling. The world simply echoes what you consistently feel yourself to be. To change your life, change the feeling you call home, for every manifestation begins and ends with the feeling that gave it birth. Think from the desire, not of it. To think of your desire is to place it outside yourself, to see it as something distant, separate, and yet to come. You observe it, you long for it. You speak about it as if it were somewhere beyond reach. But to think from your desire is to mentally and emotionally step inside it, to occupy the state where your wish is already fulfilled. One position keeps you in waiting, the other declares it done. The difference is subtle to the mind, but immense in creation, for reality mirrors only what you are conscious of being, not what you are merely wishing to become. When you think from your desire, you no longer hope or ask, You begin to imagine and feel as the person who already has what was once longed for. Your conversations change, your reactions shift, your inner dialogue transforms. You no longer look at the world through the eyes of one who lacks. You view everything from the fulfillment of your assumption. You begin to carry yourself differently, not through forced effort, but because the feeling of completion naturally expresses itself. To think from the desire is to inhabit the end, to live mentally in the reality, where the dream is already fact. Most people keep their desires locked away in the realm of thought about. They talk of what they want, visualize it as something that might happen, and continue to feel the absence of it. That absence becomes their dominant state, and the outer world faithfully reproduces it. The mind cannot experience both lack and fulfillment at the same time. It can only express one. When you think of your desire, you are reminding yourself it is not yet yours. When you think from it, you affirm its presence. That inner conviction is the seed from which manifestation grows. To think from the desire is an act of faith. It asks you to disregard appearances, to see beyond what the senses report, and to live inwardly in the unseen reality. It is to stand firm in the invisible, knowing that what you feel to be true within will soon crystallize without. You are not pretending, you are selecting, choosing the reality you wish to experience and accepting it with feeling. Every moment you persist in that assumption, the unseen forces of life are arranging themselves to bring it to pass. When you truly think from the desire, effort dissolves. You no longer chase, beg, or seek proof. You simply rest in the feeling of completion. The outer world must eventually reflect your inner position, for it is powerless to do otherwise. Your task is not to make it happen, but to remain faithful to the state where it has already happened. Thinking from the desire is living in the answered prayer, and from that state, all things flow naturally into form. Imagination is the creative power of God within you. It is the invisible force that shapes the visible world, the silent architect behind every form, every experience, every event. Nothing exists in your outer life that was not first imagined within. The clothes you wear, the home you live in, the technology you use, all were once ideas in the minds of those who dared to imagine them as real. Imagination is not a daydreaming faculty. It is the power of creation itself expressing through human awareness. When you imagine, you are not playing with thoughts. You are touching the divine power that calls things that are not seen as though they were and makes them visible. Everything begins in imagination. Every desire is a spark of creation, a glimpse of a reality that already exists in potential. When you give that idea your attention and emotional conviction, you breathe life into it. The unseen becomes alive in consciousness, and once it is alive there, it must eventually take form in your world. The process is exact and impersonal. It works for all, whether they understand it or not. Those who imagine unconsciously produce lives of repetition and limitation, while those who imagine deliberately shape their world with purpose and clarity. To imagine is to assume the feeling of being or having what you desire, to see with the inner eye what the outer eye cannot yet behold. You are not creating something new, but awakening a possibility that has always existed in the infinite mind. When you dwell on an image with belief and feeling, you impress it upon the subconscious mind, which is the womb of creation. The subconscious accepts the image as fact and sets in motion every circumstance, person, and event necessary to bring it to pass. What you hold in imagination with conviction becomes the pattern that life must express. You are never limited by the world around you. You are limited only by your imagination. To imagine boldly is to claim your divine inheritance, for imagination is the creative essence of life itself. The same power that shaped galaxies and formed the stars is at work within you, waiting to be directed. When you use imagination consciously, you rise from the level of reaction to that of creation. You stop living by default and begin to live by design. Every scene you imagine with feeling is a seed planted in the garden of the subconscious, and in due season, it will bloom into reality. Imagination is the bridge between the invisible and the visible, the unseen cause of every seen effect. To imagine with faith is to unite with the creative power that sustains the universe. The images you hold with love, gratitude, and conviction become living realities. The world outside bends to the pictures you paint within, for imagination is the power of God made personal in you. Faith means remaining loyal to your assumption. It is the quiet confidence that what you have accepted in imagination is already true, even when every outer sense denies it. Faith does not argue with appearances or plead for evidence. It stands firm in the invisible, knowing that consciousness alone creates reality. To be faithful to your assumption is to persist in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, no matter how long it takes to appear or how impossible it seems to the logical mind. It is the steadfast refusal to abandon your inner conviction, even when circumstances try to persuade you otherwise. When you assume a state and remain faithful to it, you are planting the seed of a new reality in the fertile soil of the subconscious. The seed does not sprout immediately. There is a gestation period during which unseen forces are arranging themselves to bring your assumption into form. Doubt is like uprooting the seed before it has time to grow. Faith, on the other hand, is trusting the unseen process, knowing that what has been accepted as true within must express itself without. You do not need to know how or when. It is enough to know that the creative power never fails. Remaining loyal to your assumption means living inwardly, as though your desire were already accomplished. You think from the end, not toward it. You act, feel, and respond to life from the state of fulfillment. When you do this consistently, you align every part of your being with the vibration of the desired reality. Outer conditions may still echo the past, but your inner state has already moved, and soon the reflection must follow. The world cannot resist the conviction of a mind that remains faithful to its inner vision. True faith is not blind hope, it is inner certainty. It is the quiet strength that remains unmoved by temporary appearances. You do not need to force or beg for manifestation. You simply hold to the feeling of completion until it becomes natural. The more natural the assumption feels, the sooner it hardens into fact. Faith is not about waiting for proof. It is about living as though proof already exists. When the outer world challenges you, faith reminds you that the only reality worth trusting is the one you have accepted within. Every test, every delay is an invitation to deepen that faith. The moment you choose to persist, you declare your dominion over circumstance. Life responds to your inner certainty with precision, for consciousness is the only cause. To remain loyal to your assumption is to walk in harmony with the law of creation itself. You no longer drift between belief and doubt. You stand firmly in the end, knowing that what you assume with faith must manifest. Faith is the unwavering loyalty to your inner truth until the outer world reflects it perfectly. Your outer world changes only after your inner shift. The world you see is not separate from you. It is the mirror of your inner state of consciousness. Every circumstance, every relationship, every event in your life is the outpicturing of what you have accepted as true within yourself. To change your outer conditions without changing your inner assumptions is to polish the mirror while leaving the reflection unchanged. Real transformation begins within, where thought, feeling, and belief merge to form the pattern of experience. Until that pattern is altered, the outer scene must repeat itself in different forms, but with the same essence. An inner shift happens the moment you adopt a new concept of yourself. It is not the world that must first move. It is you who must move in consciousness. The man who feels himself poor will continue to experience lack, no matter how many opportunities surround him, until he begins to feel wealth within. The woman who feels unloved will encounter indifference until she first finds love within her own heart. Everything responds to the vibration you radiate, and that vibration is the direct result of your inner state. The outer world merely echoes the inner tone, faithfully and without error. When you change your concept of self, the world must rearrange itself to match it. You cannot hold the same beliefs, dwell on the same emotions, and expect a different result. The outer world is not your master, it is your reflection. As you shift within, new possibilities emerge, new people appear, and new paths unfold. It may seem as though circumstances are changing by chance, but they are only the natural outcome of your new inner alignment. Once the inner image is different, the outer must correspond. It cannot resist, for the outer has no power of its own. This is why all real progress begins in imagination. You must see yourself differently before the world can see you differently. You must feel the new reality before it becomes visible. To wait for the outer to change first is to remain bound to the past, for the outer is always the shadow of the inner. The moment you choose to assume a new feeling, a new identity, a new belief, the process of change begins. The old world may still linger for a while, but its foundation has been removed. The new state, once accepted within, will solidify into fact as naturally as night follows day. Your outer world is a delayed reflection of your inner decisions. Every shift in consciousness eventually crystallizes as a shift in experience. When you understand this law, you stop resisting circumstances and begin transforming the self. You realize that nothing stands between you and the life you desire except the state you are choosing to occupy within. The world changes only after you do, for it is and always has been your mirror. To activate the unseen, live as though it is done. The unseen is not distant or unreachable. It is the invisible reality already existing within consciousness, waiting for you to claim it. What you call imagination is not fantasy. It is the doorway to the unseen world of creation. Every desire you hold points to a reality that is already complete in the invisible realm. To bring it into visibility, you must live as though it were already accomplished. When you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you activate the unseen power that shapes all things and directs life's circumstances to reflect your assumption. Living as though it is done means no longer identifying with waiting or hoping. You move beyond wanting into being. You begin to act, think, and feel from the end, not toward it. You see yourself as already in possession of what you once desired, and this inner conviction silently instructs the outer world to conform. You no longer chase results, because you understand that the result is already secured in consciousness. The outer world, still bound to time, will eventually catch up with what you have already accepted within. Faith is nothing more than this steadfast assumption that the unseen is real. To live as though it is done does not mean pretending or forcing appearances. It means entering the emotional state where your desire feels natural. When you dwell in that state long enough, the mind stops questioning and begins accepting. Once accepted, the subconscious sets the process of manifestation in motion. Events unfold, opportunities appear, people align, all reflecting the new inner condition you have claimed as real. The unseen does not need your effort. It needs your faith. It needs your willingness to believe that what you have imagined exists now. Most people hold their desires at a distance by constantly affirming their absence. They say they want change, yet they continue to feel as though it hasn't happened. This inner contradiction keeps the unseen dormant. The moment you stop waiting and begin living as though the change has already occurred, the unseen awakens and begins to move. Your thoughts, emotions, and actions naturally align with your new state of being. Life becomes a mirror of that inner transformation. You are never waiting for manifestation. Manifestation is waiting for you to accept it as done. The unseen is always active, but it responds to conviction, not to wishful thinking. When you persist in the feeling that it is already accomplished, the invisible becomes visible. The world simply follows the pattern impressed upon it by your consciousness. To activate the unseen is to recognize that nothing is missing, that everything you seek already exists, and that by living in the end, thinking from fulfillment rather than about it, you bring the unseen into sight through the quiet power of assumption and feeling. You must be in it to activate it. The power of creation does not respond to observation, but to participation. You cannot stand outside of the state you desire and expect it to come alive. You must step into it in consciousness, feel it, live from it, and claim it as your own. Every state already exists in the invisible realm, but it remains dormant until you occupy it. The moment you mentally enter the state of the wish fulfilled, you breathe life into it. It begins to move, to vibrate, to attract the conditions necessary for its expression. You must be in the feeling of the end before the end can be seen. To be in it means to abandon the old version of yourself, the one who longs, waits, and hopes, and to embody the version who already has. You think from the reality of completion rather than from the desire for it. You act with quiet confidence, not because of outer proof, but because your inner knowing has already accepted it as true. The outer world cannot resist that conviction. It must mirror it back to you. The law of consciousness is absolute. What you assume within yourself becomes the world around you. The unseen responds only to the state you are in, not the one you talk about or wish for. Every desire carries with it a state of being. The desire for love carries the state of being loved. The desire for wealth carries the state of abundance. The desire for health carries the state of wholeness. To activate the unseen reality of any of these, you must enter that state and dwell in it until it feels natural. You cannot merely visit it for a moment and then return to the old self. You must stay there in imagination, see the world from that new perspective, and live in its emotional atmosphere. As you persist, the outer world begins to reorganize itself around your new identity. The unseen becomes seen because you have chosen to inhabit it. This act of being in the state requires no external effort, only inner alignment. You do not have to force change upon the world. You simply have to change your standpoint within yourself. When you feel yourself to be the person you wish to become, everything necessary for that reality begins to unfold naturally. Circumstances shift, people appear, and opportunities rise without strain, all reflecting the state you now occupy. The world is nothing more than a mirror responding to your inner assumption. You must be in it to activate it because creation is finished. All possibilities already exist, but only the one you inhabit becomes real to you. The moment you occupy a new state in imagination, you call it into visible expression. To remain outside of it is to keep it unexpressed. The unseen waits for your recognition, for your willingness to enter and claim it as real, for only then does it come alive through you.